88-year-old South Korean Kim Jong-ju, a self-described World War II slave labourer at Japanese firm Fujikoshi. She's fighting for compensation and an apology.
정말로 정말 서러운 생활 많이 살았습니다. 우리 언니는.
I feel so sad that we lived a life of suffering, me and my sister. I hope Japan, Abe, will come to his senses, repent, and apologize to us.
A painful legacy at the heart of a modern trade war, which last month saw Japan slap restrictions on exports used by Korean high-tech companies to make products like memory chips and screens. Seoul believes Japan's economic retaliation is a result of a Supreme Court ruling last year in favour of compensation for forced labour during Japan's colonial-era occupation of the peninsula. Tokyo's move sparked protests and a widespread boycott of Japanese goods. Some analysts say the restrictions were an attempt by Tokyo to stop other countries filing similar claims.
It doesn't want the forced labor issue to be pan-Asian.
Japan added pressure by removing South Korea from a list of trusted trading partners. Seoul shot back, saying it will do the same.
All these kind of things seems like South Korean government is ready to fight with Japan on economic terms.
There are signs of a diplomatic pause. South Korea's trade minister says he is ready for talks anywhere, anytime. President Moon Jae-in insists there will be no winners from a trade war. And Japan is no longer threatening deeper measures. But the shadow of wartime conscription is not going away.
The issue of forced conscription has escalated to the economy of not just both countries, but the global economy. And this has become more evident that this is an issue that needs to be resolved. So this is a welcome development.
So while Seoul seeks a solution, it does so against the backdrop of a dwindling number of determined former forced labourers who say as long as they live, they will fight for justice.
Joko Widodo's re-election as Indonesia's president is looking positive for the country's investment climate. Indonesia is already seeing a surge of investments in various sectors. During Joko Widodo's campaign, he promised to strengthen Indonesia's economic growth and open up jobs for millions of people each year.
Iklim investasi kita secara keseluruhan.
Since April, Indonesia's investments have increased immensely, which is what the country needs. However, we are seeing that the investments are mostly in the tertiary sectors, which doesn't provide a lot of job opportunities. But it does help to close the gap in the country's current account deficit and stabilize our currency.
For much of Joko Widodo's first term, he focused on making investments easy in Indonesia by introducing quick licensing approvals and reducing dwelling times in customs and ports. Singapore, Japan, and China remains the biggest investors in Indonesia, with investments ranging from transportation and infrastructure-related sectors to the digital economy.
Indonesia, I think, is one of the most lucrative investment destination in ASEAN because still we are one of the most stable emerging countries, and also we are still we have a huge domestic market. Can you imagine beyond 250 million people will be the market for any investor. So that's why investors still look at the Indonesian market because we are still the biggest country in ASEAN.
Indonesia's ranking in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index has also drastically improved. Out of 180 countries, it jumped from 120 last year to 73 this year. Indonesia is now eyeing massive investments under the Belt and Road Initiative. Back in April, the government submitted several projects worth more than $90 billion. This opens the country up to new sets of opportunities that could boost economic growth significantly.
Singapore has further cut its annual growth forecast as escalating global trade tensions hammer exports, in another ominous sign for Asia's trade-reliant economies. The government said it expected growth of 0 to 1% this year, sharply down from the 1.5 to 2.5% previously estimated, marking the second downward revision this year. The economy expanded 3.2% in 2018. Experts say the export hub is highly sensitive to external shocks and has traditionally been one of the first places in Asia to be hit during global downturns. The Singapore Trade Ministry says the growth prospects of key emerging markets and developing economies have worsened, partly due to the escalation of trade conflict in recent months.
Dignitaries, veterans, descendants of those who resisted the Japanese occupation, schoolchildren, and a study group from Japan. They all gathered at the new Second World War People's Monument.
We remember all our fellow citizens who lost their lives in World War II, buried in mass graves across the country, no matter what their ethnic group.
They also paid respects at other nearby memorials, to the local truck drivers who volunteered to ferry goods to China when it was blockaded by Japan, and to civilian victims of the occupation of Malaya.
We express our deep condolences to the truck drivers, the overseas Chinese and Malayan people of all ethnic groups who lost their lives in the war of resistance against Japanese aggression, and pay our heartfelt tribute to the organizers of this memorial.
In Malaysia, it is left to local Chinese community groups and foundations to build and maintain memorials like these and work to keep memories of the occupation alive.
Taking history as a mirror, we must let the new generation understand the ruthlessness and destruction of war, deeply experience the historical stories, and understand the value of peace, so that they will be committed to creating and maintaining it.
Remembering the sacrifices made and atrocities suffered during the occupation to make sure nothing like it ever happens again.
Buddhist monks at a temple in the Thai capital, Bangkok. But the robes these monks are wearing are made from plastic waste. 60 plastic bottles can be recycled in making each set of robes. The monks say everyone has a part to play in clearing the planet of plastic trash.
I was looking for a way to recycle plastic bottles. I heard someone had made a shirt from plastic, so I thought we could make our monks robes.
Plastic bottles are donated to the temple. The monks crush them into bales and send them to a recycling plant where they're combined with cotton and zinc oxide to produce fabric. The fabrics return to the temple to be made into robes. 30% of each robe comes from recycled materials. The monks say every little helps in tackling what is a global problem. They hope their ideas will spread and be taken up by big corporations. Thailand produces around 1 million tons of plastic waste each year. It's one of the worst offenders for illegal dumping. A campaign's underway to reduce plastic use. The monks also make t-shirts, belts, even chairs from plastic. They're looking for new ways to reduce the trash that ends up in landfills, or worse still, the sea, destroying both the environment and marine life.